What is up, my people? It's the Motley GM here, and today I want to kick off my genre chat series with a genre that is near and dear to my heart, and that is Wuxia or Wuxia fantasy. I'm sure I'll be corrected in the comments. Please be gentle. To start off with, Wuxia or Wuxia loosely translates into heroic fiction. This is specifically heroic fiction that is derived from Chinese history and culture and folklore, and typically features mostly martial arts heroes from the past, as you may imagine. We typically are looking at pre-modern Chinese society in a lot of these stories and movies, just to be specific of what we're talking about here. From roughly the 1960s to about the mid-1990s, very rough dates I'm throwing out here, guys, there's a collection and or genre of movies that back in my day, we just called them kung fu flicks, old school kung fu flicks. This is a genre of movies that has quite the cult following. They were a huge inspiration to a lot of people, and it's those movies that inspire the Wuxia tabletop RPG games. And that's just coming from my experience of what I've seen so far. I'm sure there would be somebody out there that would say different, but from my experience, the typical Wuxia tabletop game is inspired from movies, old movies, all the way up into slightly more modern movies that have these wuxia stories in them, these stories of old martial arts heroes and their accomplishments. Now, I'm not only a huge fan of old school kung fu movies, and I'll tell you why in just a minute here, but on top of that, because of watching those movies, I have also been a practitioner of kung fu for over 20 years. I study a 5-animal style of kung fu called Wuxia, and that's been a huge part of my life. And it's because those movies first being such a big part of my life that I even did that. I want to take a moment here to give a huge shout out to an actor named Gordon Liu and the movie The 36th Chamber of Shaolin. As a young child, that movie left such a huge impression on me. And I know many of you may watch and be like, I don't get it. But, I'm just going to tell you, to a 8-9-year-old me, when I first watched that movie, it pretty much changed my life. And it is the reason why I study Kung Fu to this day. So big shout out to them. A small little side note, the training montage scene in the 36th Chamber of Shaolin, if I remember correctly, is the first time that was ever done and inspired all the ones that came after it, including Rocky. So just a little trivia out there. I'll try not to go on too many side rants though. But how did I become such a fan of these movies? Well, let me tell you. I moved around a lot growing up, but I spent a lot of my time growing up, and I was born in New Jersey. And I think a lot of Gen Xers, especially from the East Coast, may relate to this story. So we were in a kind of unique place in New Jersey where we would receive television channels both from New York and from Philly. This is back in the antenna days for those people that don't really understand why that would happen the way it did. However, we were able to get channels from both. Now, the cool thing was, and again, correct me for those of you that remember more clearly than me, one of those stations played a show called Kung Fu Theater. Another one of those stations played a show called Kung Fu Mania, right? And they were showcasing old school Kung Fu movies that had become popular through being shown in movie theaters the decades before that. My brothers and I started watching these. They would come on a couple hours after cartoons. So we'd watch cartoons in the morning, go outside for a while, then come back inside to watch these movies. And we just fell in love. We stumbled upon them one day, really, and fell in love with them almost instantly. And it was just like opening up the floodgates for us as children. We love these movies. I'm just going to throw out the 2 production studios here that have a big role in a lot of these movies: Shaw Brothers Studios and Golden Harvest Studios. Look them up. However, they kind of were the kings of those particular styles of movies, and the primary ones we watched growing up were from one of those 2 studios. As much as we love those movies, we found out later on as we were getting a little older that a lot of people shared that same experience and really loved and watched these movies. It wasn't everybody, but a lot more than we thought. We thought we were the only ones, of course, for a while. I mean, we loved these movies. We wanted to be those heroes. We used to pretend to be these martial arts heroes growing up. It's what we looked up to and admired, and was such a big part of our inspiration as children. Honestly, guys, I'll throw out some recommended movies later There's a ton of them, so I'm only going to name some. So if you see those and you think I missed one, by all means, throw them in the comments. But that'll be a little bit later on in the video. The other thing that's really awesome about these movies is twofold. They inspired a lot of people like myself, and I know I'm not the only one that went on that journey, to go and study martial arts. In my case, and in the case of a few of us at least, we specifically sought out Chinese martial arts to study and to learn and to become part of our lives. And that's really important. But on top of that, those movies also inspired another generation of people that went on to make movies. And those old school kung fu movies and the movies that came subsequently after them inspired people both in America and around the world to up their game and make better action movies, make better fight choreography. And I think that's really awesome that this kind of niche little genre that not as many people know about, or at least they didn't when I was growing up, really did inspire and change the world. The cool thing is that on the East Coast at that time, there was just so many people from all over the world that were living there, that the handful of us that had this experience were just very different from each other, but at the same time shared that love. And it brought a small community together, which ended up being the kind of cult following that is the old school kung fu movie following that we see today. People from around the world are still watching Shaw Brothers and Golden Harvest movies to this day. I know this because I'm on a part of a couple of groups that specifically are fans of these movies. And, you know, there's people from all over the world on these groups. And I think that it's really cool that people are taking that and using those movies and the love for those movies as an inspiration for a game. And they're doing it with so much love and so much care to what those movies are and what they represented. And I think that's really wonderful. And these are two great examples of people who I feel share that same love and respect for those movies. And I really am maybe overselling it here a little bit, but you know, this genre of movie for a good handful of us were super important to our growing up and really left an indelible mark on our hearts and our minds. And I don't feel I'm alone on this. And if you share that point of view, just let me know. So you want to get into playing some Wuxia tabletop. If you're already excited about that, I'm going to have to assume you're already familiar with the movies I'm talking about. Maybe you were laughing at my story because it sounded so familiar, or maybe you just think I'm weird. Either way, no worries. If you're familiar with the movies already, you're already doing this for the right reasons and the right way, I feel, and have a blast, because there's a couple ways you could do it just with these, but there's other games out there, of course. If you're not somebody who's already a fan of these movies like I am, and if you want to get into it and try to have some fun and understand why they may be written the way they are, then let me give you some tips. And if I got to hold your hand here a little bit, or if I seem like I am, I'm sorry, but that's for the people that need it. If you're going to play a Wuxia game, first and foremost, just please have respect for the culture that these stories and tropes come from. Because believe me, Wuxia stories and movies have a great many tropes in them, and these games really, really focus in on that. And I think that's great for what it is. But have some respect for the culture that it comes from, of course. Don't put on any weird accents that you think are cute or funny. It's not. Just have some respect. I don't think I need to tell a lot of you that, but for those that don't, you know, just be respectful. Approach it with some respect and some understanding. I don't think many of you need to hear that, however. If you're not already familiar with the movies that these games are inspired by, go watch them. I'm not only saying that as a big fan of these movies who would love to see more people become fans and love them, but in all honesty, you can't really understand the feel and flavor of what these games are trying to do without having a little understanding about the movies. And again, I'm going to throw a list out there of like a starter kind of, you can check some of these out, and those searches will lead you to tons of other movies, trust me. But go watch the movies. Enjoy them. Find the ones you like and use those as inspirations for your games. There's nothing wrong with that at all. In fact, I encourage it. It gets you not only watching movies that I love, but it also gets you into a different genre of tabletop game. And I think more people should leave fantasy sometimes and get into some other genres. And that's why I wanted to do the genre chat, to give you guys some other options on genres out there that maybe you're not too familiar with, or maybe you want to get more familiar with. On that note, yeah, take some time. learn a little bit about Chinese culture, especially pre-modern Chinese culture. There's nothing wrong with that, and there's no way am I trying to tell you to be an expert historian. Just learn a little bit about it and have some understanding. Bonus, if you look into Chinese martial arts history, kung fu history, the Shaolin Temple and the fighting monks that come out of there. There's a lot of famous stories that come from that alone. Maybe even look into some of the martial arts heroes from Chinese culture and martial arts families that created styles of kung fu. There's just so much out there, right? And I'm just throwing out little bits for you to kind of bite at and go look up and check out. But in all honesty, learning just a little bit about that stuff gives you so much more of an understanding of why the tropes in these movies are there and who some of these people are and why that was even important. Increase your knowledge, increases your fun in the way I look at game playing. So I'm hoping by encouraging you to do a little bit of research and take on a little bit of the historian in you and engage in that with this, you're not only going to understand a culture a little better, understand these games a little better, but it's also going to make it more fun for you because you understand how to go about creating the stories that Wuxia attempts to tell. And I think that's fun. I think that's great. I think more people should give it a shot. I can gush forever about kung fu movies and all that stuff. So I'm going to try to close some things off here and let you know right away. Wuxia and kung fu movies, the art of kung fu, and tabletop games are going to be things that I will love from now, or from when I was a child, I guess I should say, until the day that I no longer exist on this planet. And that is just the way it's going to be. It's very natural that tabletop games and the old school kung fu movie genre have mashed together into a wonderful, wonderful way of playing tabletop gaming, and a genre that I would love to see get bigger and even expand. Again, these are only two examples. There's plenty of other ones out there. However, take a look at these. Check them out. This one is a D6 dice pool system. This one is a 2D10 system. Both interesting in the way they do it. Check them out. I highly recommend them. My people, always remember that we live in a world with increasing sensitivity and awareness, both in regards of what's happening with culture and ways that they're portrayed and they're taken in. And I think that's important to remember. So with most things, especially in this realm of thought and idea, I always think approaching things respectfully and with the care and love of that respect will always do you better than coming at it with preconceived ideas. So if I can encourage you to do nothing else, at least approach things with an open mind and with kindness and respect. And I think that you will find that things work out really well and you can really have a lot of fun and learn a lot of cool new things. So I don't have to tell a lot of you that, but once again, there's a couple of you that might needed to hear that. So there you are. Play Wuxia games, people. Play them, try them out, watch the movies, explore the history and culture, and have a lot of fun, because there's stories you could tell in Wuxia that you can't tell in other games, and there's stories you could tell in there that you can tell in other games, but with a totally different flavor. So please go out there, check that stuff out. So I promised you guys a list of movies, and what I'm going to do is give you a couple of short lists. This is by no means exhaustive, and if there's a movie you think I missed or a movie that you would really love other people to check out, please sound off in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts and ideas on this as well. But consider this like a starter set, if you will, or at least a starting point. If you look up a lot of these movies, trust me, they will branch off into plenty of other movies you can explore. Let me throw some of my favorites out there and a couple just randoms that I also think are good. Big shout out again to the 36 Chamber of Shaolin. Such an influential movie on my life, and I still watch that movie at least 2 to 3 times a year. Shaolin versus Wu-Tang, The 5 Deadly Venoms, House of Traps, the Once Upon a Time in China series, both with Jet Li and without him. There's a story there, but I'll have you guys look that one up yourself. Drunken Master 1 and 2, Five Fingers of Death, and Fist of the White Lotus. That is for your old school movie list. Now, I'm going to give you a little Wuxia adjacent list of 80s movies, just because 80s movies, guys. Also, these are just fun and kind of take those tropes from some of the old school movies and over exaggerate them in the glorious way that the 80s did. Check out movies like Bloodsport, the American Ninja series, the Best of the Best series, Enter the Ninja and Revenge of the Ninja, or pretty much anything Sho Kosugi did. The Last Dragon, which is a personal favorite of mine, and Blood Fist, and Don the Dragon Wilson. Again, his career is just, check some of those movies out. If you don't love them, then hey, that's fine, but I think you'll have a good time watching them either way. If you want to talk about a little bit more of the more modern movies that I might recommend you to check out, that give you some inspiration for these types of games, look at movies like Ong Bak and The Protector and Tony Jaa, the stuff that he did, the Ip Man series, Fearless, The Raid, or you can just look into careers of actors like Jet Li, Donnie Yen, Sammo Hung, Jackie Chan, to name some names that might be familiar to a bunch of people. These guys have much longer careers than most of us think, and most of them started off when they were kids, weren't even 16, some of them, when they started off in the movies. So check out their careers. You'll find a lot of stuff from the old school and them, making it into the new school as well. I could go on forever. I'm going to shut up there. Documentaries, I'll give you 3 to check out. The Black Kung Fu Experience does a really good job of explaining how Kung Fu movies had such an effect on a community. Iron Fist and Kung Fu Kicks does a really good job just talking about the movies in general. And the 2011 film Films of Fury does the same thing. These are all movies about Kung Fu movies, basically. And I recommend you check those things out. Love Wuxia, and I can't promote it enough. I'll stop gushing now. So guys, let me tell you, whether you're at home, at the table with your friends all around you, or in the virtual tabletop space with your friends in your ears, no matter what you want to play what you want, and always play for fun first. Thanks for watching, everybody.